and welcome back to another chapter of It Hurts to Hope by Inquilatory on AO3. Chapter 2, Black Sheep of the Flock. Scar lets out a relieved breath as the Watcher finally passes out, slumping against his chest like a puppet with cut strings. He eases the being down until he's resting against the hastily constructed wall, trying to make sure that the purple wings aren't in an uncomfortable position. "Nice catch," Mumbo comments at his side, stowing away the bottle of potion he forced down the Watcher's throat. Discomfort flickers across his face for a moment before it's gone again, replaced by wariness. "Is everyone okay?" Zedef calls out, and Impulse grimaces and holds up a hand. "Little bugger bit me," he mutters, motioning to the ring of red indents on his arm. "I'll be fine, though." Running footsteps split apart the silence, and Scar's head whips up as Cleo and Etho rush into view, then skid to a stop when they see the unconscious stranger. "Oh good, you got it," Cleo gasps out, bracing her arms on her knees before shooting the being a look and amending. "Him. You got him." "Wasn't easy," Impulse replies, uncorking the top of a healing potion and pouring a little over his arm. Something sizzles, and then the bite marks are gone, leaving nothing behind but unblemished skin. Xuma crouches down next to Scar and motions for him to move over as he opens his admin panel, scanning the Watcher from head to toe. "I'm surprised it was that easy," he whispers, almost to himself, eyes glued to the screen. "He managed to evade Cleo and Etho, died, respawned, bit Impulse, and tried to fight before Mumbo got that potion down his throat," Scar says, retrieving his cane from where he dropped it and rising to his feet with a wince. "I wouldn't call it easy." "You're forgetting that he's a Watcher, Scar," Xuma says quietly, and they can all see the tension radiating through his shoulders. "He could have easily torn through our code as well, or evaded us for much longer than he did, if he actually used his sight." "But he didn't," Tego notes, edging a bit closer now that the danger is partially over. "How come?" "See this?" Xuma points to a line of text, surprisingly short in the tangled mess that is the Watcher's code. "That's his energy levels. They're practically nil. He must have used all he had to simply get in here. And once he was in, he couldn't get back out," False completes, coming up behind them, "so he could do nothing but run." They all fall silent for a moment, as Xuma continues to look through the code, and everyone else looks at their new prisoner. Now, with the adrenaline and fear quickly wearing off, they're hesitant on what to do with him. The Watcher is, well, young. Younger than most of the hermits. In fact, with a gaunt face and hollow cheeks, matted hair that could have been a shade of dark blonde at some point, and torn clothes that had seen better days. His wings are crumpled and dirty, with his eyes closed and the strange broken portal markings gone from his forehead and shoulders. He looks normal. "He doesn't really look like a world destroyer," Mumbo offers, and a few heads bob along the sentiment. "It could just be a ploy to get us to lower their guards," Etho replies, and several shoulders tense up again, hands running along weapons and tightening around hilts. "Well, we won't find anything out with him unconscious," Xuma finally says, shutting down his screen and looking back at the Watcher. "We'll need to figure out a place to keep in. One that I can encase in code. he's not escaping again. I'll help, Tango says, and several other voices rise up, promising their support. Exuma nods and stands, and even though the helmet he wears practically obscures his face, they know that his eyes are locked on the Watcher, unsure and wary of what happens next. Zelqua's head hurts. No, actually, everything hurts. In a dull throbbing way that tells him that it had already been hurting and would continue to do so. He stands completely still and tries to figure out what's happening without moving, and several things hit his senses at once. For one, he's lying on something soft. His fingers twitch in an attempt to touch it, and they brush against what he feels like fabric. A bed? He's unsure, too, why he'd be lying on a bed. He hasn't slept in one for so long. There's a warm glow behind his eyelids, but it's faint enough that he comes to the conclusion of an underground room. A dungeon? He isn't sure what kind of dungeon has this comfortable of a bed, but maybe it's a trick to lure him into a false sense of security. He brushes against the fabric again, marveling at its texture, and something shifts on his wrist with a small clank. He freezes, petrified. After what is surely an eternity, he finally builds up the courage to gently run his fingers along the noise-making thing. It is cool and tough. It encircles his wrist and has something trailing from it, attaching to his other hand with a similar circular object. Handcuffs. That's it. He's familiar with that, at least. Running a finger along them again, he tries to open his eyes to see where he is. He can't. For the first time ever, his eyes refuse to open, leaving him in complete darkness. Panic presses up into his throat, and he prods a finger at the handcuffs again, trying to read their code. The bravest sliver slips into his mind, and what he finds relaxes him to some extent, and makes him much more afraid. The handcuffs have been coded to block his powers, though how someone accomplished that is a mystery in itself. If he only had more energy, he'd be able to simply smash them apart, but as he is, weak and vulnerable, the cuffs are there to stay. With nothing more to gain from faking sleep, Zelqa opens his eyes and slowly sits up, wincing as the blood rushes to his head. His suspicions have been proven true. He's in a small room lit by a few lanterns, with walls of stone, a plain white carpet decorating the floor. Zelqa truly has no idea why someone would bother waste a carpet on what is obviously a cell, if the iron door is any indication. And a temporary one at that. Zelqa has no disillusions as to what will happen next. Whoever lives on this server will interrogate him for information, torture him when he gives none, and either unravel his code on the spot or simply chuck him into the void, left to disintegrate into nothing but stardust. His energy too depleted to help him survive for long. Zelqa isn't sure which one he'd prefer. At this point, he can do nothing but wait for his sentence and accept it as best as he can. His power too low to do anything, even if he didn't have the cuffs. Something outside the door clicks, and Zelqa immediately scrambles back as the door swings open, and a person steps into the room. The person isn't one he's seen before, with fiery red eyes and spiky blonde hair that seem to trail off into flames. Oh, he's Netherborn. Zelqa's never seen one. He's only read about their kind in books. He's holding what looks like a bowl, but freezes with one foot in the room when he realizes Zelqa is very much awake and crammed into the furthest corner he can manage. Silence stretches out as Zelqa and the man stare at each other until the man finally slowly lowers the bowl onto the carpet and backs out through the door, never taking his eyes off the other. The minute the door swings closed again, Zelka hears the man speak to someone, voice tight and nervous. "Call X! The Watcher's awake!" There's that X person again. Zelka spares a moment's thought of who they might be, but the smell of whatever the man has left behind distracts him quickly. Cautiously edging out of his corner, Zelka slips down to the floor and approaches the bowl, crouching down next to it and sniffing at the contents. Some kind of soup, he guesses? It's probably poisoned. But who cares? Food is food! And Zelka can't remember the last time he's eaten. He lifts the bowl up in both hands and gives its content a tentative lick, then practically inhales the whole thing. Chains clanking against each other as he empties the soup into his mouth. Oh, it tastes amazing! Like meat and salt and earth vegetables he can't name, and spices that burst along his tongue with flavor. It doesn't matter if it's poisoned, Zelka decides, because it's worth it. This wonderful food that he'd eat every day if he had the chance. Depositing the bowl back on the floor, Zelka stands and takes a moment to inspect the room. There's no windows, further confirming his suspicion of being underground. The walls are simple, plain stone bricks, and the lanterns are too high up for him to reach. The carpet is, well, carpet, and refuses to budge from the floor. The bed is pointless, which leaves the door. Zelka is cautious in approaching it, as he's sure there's someone on the other side, ends up crouching under it to avoid being seen through the holes in the top. He taps a finger on the lock, frustrated that he can't see into it and pick apart its code. If his energy levels were normal, it could be so easy to just unravel its existence, rewrite it so that it was unlocked. Voices are suddenly rising up on the other side of the door, and Zelka shoots up so fast he almost topples over. He presses himself against the wall, barely daring to breathe. The door creaks open and someone steps inside, freezing when they don't spot the being who's supposed to already be in the room. But Zelka is already moving, dodging around the person and bolting for the door, arms outstretched, wings tight against his back as he tries to move as quickly as possible. An arm hitches around Zelka's waist and unceremoniously tosses him back into the room with surprising strength. He hits the ground hard and struggles to draw breath for a moment because the air escapes his lungs and refuses to come back. "Close the door," someone says, and a different voice rises up in protest. "But X?" "Close it!" Zelka feels a shiver crawl down his spine, because that's a voice that carries power. This is someone to be feared. The door snaps shut, and Zelka's only hope of escape crumbles and withers away. He rises onto his elbows and skitters backwards until he hits the wall, folding himself into the corner with his legs brought up in defense, because whoever this is, they're bound to be mad, and he's going to be hurt. He's gonna die here, and that'll be it. Nothing happens for several tense moments, and Zelka finally builds up the courage to lower his handcuffed arms from his head and unfold his wings, peering out into the room. And, oh, he finally realizes, a bit too late, X is the admin. The armored man is tall, with a helmet that hides his face and a visor that reflects Zelka back at him. A scrawny, terrified thing that holds his cuffed hands to his chest like they will protect him. The admin is also a Void Walker, which Zelka can feel emitting from every point of his being, and that just makes so much sense. Why the server's code was so resistant? Why the cuffs can restrain him? Zelka is on a Void Walker's server. And if he hadn't been screwed before, he definitely is now. X stands on the doorstep, and his head tilts down to regard the overturned bowl on the floor, then back up to Atzwelqua. There's nothing to be gleaned from his covered face and tense stance. This worries Zelqua more than anything else. The silence continues to stretch out, and Zelqua wonders if he should kneel, beg forgiveness, and throw himself at the mercy of this obviously powerful admin. But his stubborn, stupid pride won't let him, and he stays in his corner, eyes latched onto the Voidwalker. X slowly, tentatively lowers himself onto the floor next to the bull and crosses his legs, folding his hands together in a very proper way. Zelqua stares at him for a long moment, then tentatively lowers his cuffed hands into his lap and folds his wings back just slightly. My name is Exuma. I am the admin of the server. Exuma finally says, breaking the silence. Do you have a name? Zelqua stares. Exuma stares. The admin finally clears his throat and glances away, hands tightening around each other. Alright then. I guess that's fine too. He looks back at Zelqua. Do you know where you are? A beat. Zelqua slowly shakes his head, the barest minimum of movement. This seems to both please and confuse the admin, who tilts his head ever so slightly. So you didn't choose this server as a target? What? A target? He'd only been looking for a hiding place from the other Watchers. Who said anything about targets? Belatedly, Zelqua remembers how Watchers have a reputation for taking over servers, using the players like they are pawns in a horrid game of chess. And, oh, he gets it now. He understands it all. The panic and aggression to the server reacted with, their determination to find him, their fear of what he could do, especially the admin. If he's a Voidwalker, it's possible he even interacted with Watchers at some point. Zelqua realizes that Exuma is still waiting for an answer. He shakes his head again, this time more decisively. No, it's definitely not a target. He can see the stiffness in the admin's shoulders melt away, tension that he hadn't even noticed until it was gone. Exuma nods sharply, and his fingers relax their white-knuckled grip. You're on a server called Hermitcraft, Exuma informs him. There's around 20 players, and every one of them is a competent warrior who has their own strengths. I wouldn't recommend fighting. Zelqua nods this time to show he's understood. The admin looks over him again and seems to come to a conclusion, because he rises to his feet. Zelqua tenses, but the admin simply picks up the empty soup bowl and looks down at the Watcher sitting in the corner. Even if you landed here by accident, I'm afraid you're still a threat to this server, Exuma tells him. And there's a strange mix of decisiveness and something that might be relief in his voice. So, you're staying in here until I get the code fixed, and then you have to leave. Leave. Better than to be killed. But panic still spears. But panic still spears through him. Leaving means going back to the void, which he doesn't have enough energy for. Leaving means being exposed to the Watchers again. Leaving means death, even more surely than staying. Exuma is departing, about to call out to whoever is on the other side of the door. Wait. The admin freezes at the word, at the harsh, raspy vocal cords grating against each other from disuse. It's almost silent, but it's there. He turns back towards Zelqua, who slowly levers himself onto unsteady feet, almost a head and a half shorter than the admin. Zelqua pushes his pride into the darkest corner of his shattered heart and kneels down in front of Exuma, wings splayed wide in surrender. He hears a sharp intake of breath from the admin, but doesn't dare look up, closing his eyes against the tears of panic that push at the edges. "You owe me nothing," Zelqua says, voice barely above a dusty rasp. "I deserve nothing after what I've done. But if you're gonna kill me, just make it quick." He swallows again, feeling like there is something caught in his throat. "That's all I ask." He takes in a breath and bends his head farther down, neck completely exposed, and wings still spread on either side of him, tips brushing the ground and walls. A moment passes, then two. Zelqua wonders if the admin is already reaching for his code, ready to sever and destroy it irreversibly. He's never actually felt his code be shattered, and he hopes it won't hurt. A gloved hand touches his head, tentative and feather-light. Zelqua's breath catches in his throat, but he doesn't dare look up. The hand drifts from the top of his head and down to his chin, gently lifting it up until Zelqua's gaze latches onto Xuma's. Xuma has taken his helmet off, and his eyes now look down at Zelqua in a mixture of sadness and confusion. He's kneeling in front of Zelqua, but even in the position, he is still taller, and the Voidwalker's eyes bore into Zelqua's heart, into his very code. "We're not going to kill you," Zelqua says slowly, and Zelqua blinks up at him a few times. We're not sure we can have a watcher on this server." "I don't have any energy left," Zelqua whispers, desperate to make him understand that it isn't a choice, but rather an inevitability. "I can't travel like you, Voidwalker. If I leave, I'll die and disperse into code. And even if I don't..." His breath catches again, and the second option too horrific to even comprehend, but he forces it out anyways. "If I don't, they'll find me." A flicker of surprise passes across Xuma's face when he hears Zelqua call him Voidwalker, but it quickly disappears and is replaced by something dark, foreboding. Zelqua is nearly convinced that he's going to do it anyways. Cast him out into the void. "I won't fight you," Zelqua says, in a last desperate attempt to escape the void's crushing grasp and the Watcher's ever-opening eyes. "Whatever you choose, I won't fight. Just make it fast." He lifts his head up a bit more, exposing his throat to the admin. It's the last thing he can think to do. The only place other than the heart where the most important code is located. One of the most vulnerable spots on the player. And even though Zelqua isn't a player, not anymore, the anatomy stays the same. The hand comes back to his cheek, and he's so sure that it's going to trail down to his exposed neck and lash onto the code that makes up his life and pull. Instead, it levers his head down, back into the gaze of Xuma. "We're not gonna kill you, Watcher," Xuma says, emphasizing the words as if it will make him understand more. "If you mean no harm to us, we mean no harm to you." Zelqua blinks at him owlishly, hesitant acceptance trying to wriggle into his brain. "I don't have to leave?" "Not if it means your death, no." Xuma's gloved hand is still resting lightly on his cheek, and the thumb moves to wipe away something wet on Zelqua's face. Tears? When had he started crying? "Until we decide what to do with you, or until your power replenishes, you're staying here. Understood?" Zelqua nods, the merest dip of his head, but it seems to satisfy Xuma. because he moves his hand away and stands up, retrieving his helmet and putting it back on. You'll stay here for the time being, but if you need anything, there should always be someone outside, Zuma says by way of farewell, and turns towards the door. Zelqua stays in the center of the room, kneeling on the too soft carpet, feeling like there's something he should say. Zelqua. It's small, quiet, barely a whisper, but it's enough to make Exuma pause and turn around. Pardon? Zelqua, the Watcher repeats, slightly louder. My name, it's Zelqua. It's not really his name. He knows that in his heart, but he doesn't have any other, and he has to show his gratitude somehow. He hopes that Exuma will understand the gesture. The admin echoes the word, rolling it around for a moment. Alright. Thank you, Zelqua. And then Exuma is gone, and Zelqua is left alone in a cell that doesn't really feel like a cell, because there's lanterns, and carpet, and a soft bed, and delicious view that tastes like heaven. He's certainly been in worse. He's unsure if these Hermitcraft players really think this is the right place for a prisoner. The thought of food makes his stomach grumble, and he hesitantly stands, padding over to the door and resting a cautious hand on the cool metal. It doesn't swing forward, obviously, but there's still something reassuring in the touch. Hello? He calls, and something crashes on the other side. He freezes, wondering if he should just retreat back into his room, but there's the sound of someone cursing, and then footsteps before a figure appears on the other side of the door. Hi, the man asks hesitantly, running fingers through his close-cut hair. Zelqua swallows and debates just turning around and going back, but his stomach protests, so he steels his nerves and speaks. Can I get some more soup, please? He asks, trying to be as polite as possible. The man on the other side straightens the sleeves on his black shirt, then clears his throat and nods quickly. Yeah, sure. Of course. I'll go get some. I'll be right back. The man turns and is about to leave, but Delquia's hesitant voice stops him. Are you the one I bit? Yes. The man replies, glancing over his shoulder again. Zelqua chews on the inside of his lips, stopping when he tastes blood. I'm very sorry, he offers, and the man blinks, hesitating. He finally gives a half shrug and something that might resemble a smile. It's all right, he replies, and then he's gone, disappearing up a flight of stairs. Zelqua watches after him for a moment, then returns to his bed and sits down, running a hand over the covers. If he could just stay on these players' good sides, maybe they'll let him stay for a little bit. And at least until his energy replenishes. Then he'll probably have to leave. His head already hurts at the thought of going back into the void, repeating the process of running and searching and hiding. Zelqua shakes his head quickly and buries his face in his hands. He doesn't have to think about that right now. He's safe, sort of, and the Watchers won't find him here. Leaning back against the wall, Zelqua tries to adjust his wings to a better position and settles down to wait. And that is the end of Chapter 2.